Why is it always drowning? Good morning, sunshine. Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to Tiger's Occult Books and Research. I'm your friendly internet paranormal researcher and investigator, and this is the shop manager, Mr. Zorro. And today we're going to cover another requested entity from Vietnam, the Maya. This is another entity that's not mentioned in any of my reference materials, so we'll have to make do with the smattering of research that I can do, and I'm going to tell you where it comes from, how to identify it, what it does, we'll address any ethical concerns, and then we'll make sure we go over safe interaction with the entity if you should ever come across it during your travels. Isn't that right? That's correct. So let's get started with the origins. So let's get started with the origins. The earliest documented reference that I've been able to come across was a French work, Stories and Legends of Annam, by Clotilde Chivas Baron, published in 1920, where they're referred to as water genii. The legend itself is much, much older than that, thought to come from the medieval period, but I haven't been able to locate any documentation to support that claim. That doesn't really tell us much, though, considering the Maya is generally an oral story passed down from storyteller to storyteller. With so little information on the origins available, let's move on to the physical identification method. Due to lack of proper historical documentation, we're also limited to modern visual interpretations, which I tend to avoid using. However, we're still going to dig a bit into the description nonetheless. Frankly, their description is pretty unpleasant. They're said to appear as a drowning victim, bloated, waterlogged, pale skin. Looks like the walking result of an Oisolotl attack. Before we get off track, you can click that link. I've already covered the Oisolotl, so let's just focus on the Maya instead. Something of interest to note, the hair is almost always described as being long, tangled, and caked up with river weeds or sludge, like something that's been at the bottom of a river for a long time. Lastly, these entities have been known to use a childlike disguise, camouflaging itself as an innocent child in order to lure potential victims to the water's edge. So when we get into the classification, description, and identification system, these are former humans, but there is no evidence that their human identity is able to be established or remembered, so they actually remain anonymous hauntings. These are pure vengeance and spite entities. Therefore, we're going to head and consider them a Class 3. Now, Maya seem to be permanently trapped in the rough, general geographic area where they drowned, so they are definitely anchored and focused. Likewise, they seem to be rather obsessive in regards to their behavioral patterns, focusing on drowning the next victim so we can consider it a repeater. So when we put it all together, the Maya is a Class 3 anchored, focused, repeating phantasm. Moving into the folklore tales and legends, the Maya is a grim tale. A Maya is created when someone drowns in a body of water, a river, a lake, what have you. Instead of being able to cross into the afterlife due to the painful, distressing mechanism of death, the spirit of the drowning victim is trapped here on our plane of existence, and it seeks to pass on its fate to the next victim. There is the replacement theory where the Maya can find its rest only by drowning the next victim, and the next victim replaces the original. Like many entities of this classification, it still remains anchored to the area where it died. Also, like many entities in Vietnamese folklore, it's used as a warning to children as well. Don't go swimming alone is general good advice, but kids don't always listen without a little extra oomph. Revealing that there are undead creatures lurking in the water that will drown you if you don't listen to mom and dad kind of hammers that point home, don't you think? So let's touch on the ethical considerations. You have to realize that Maya are victims just as much as their intended victims. They're trapped, constantly drowning, suffering, and the only option they have to save themselves is to drown someone else so the cycle can continue. It's really a rough situation to be in. In Vietnamese folklore, ghosts are a sign of wrongful death, or I'm going to screw this pronunciation up, but Chet Wan. I find it fascinating that the Vietnamese have narrowed it down to a wrongful death, while modern paranormal analysis has determined that severe psychological trauma near the time of death generally tends to significantly increase the likelihood of leaving a psychic imprint on the surrounding fabric of this plane of existence, resulting in a psychic remnant. That's a whole lot of PhD in paranormal sciences words to mean, yeah, the Vietnamese were about right on how that all works. So, because the Maya are just as much victims as anyone else, I'm not really going to go ahead and recommend active offensive operations against them. Defensive, sure, you have to protect yourself, but actively going after Maya is just cruel. Speaking of, let's touch on the safe interaction protocols real quick here. One of the stories I've come across, shared by Din Huan Ka, and I probably borked that pronunciation too. A method of preventing drowning is with a decoy. A fisherman was out with his son. They encountered a Maya. They jury-rigged 2 dummies and marked them with a drop of blood, and then they swam for shore. When they got to the shore, the Maya had capsized the boat and dragged the dummies to the bottom of the river. So, countermeasures might be an option for you if you have the time to put something together. Mirrors are said to scare spirits with their own reflection, so that's worth a shot. Not swimming alone tends to be a good option in both general life as well as for avoiding Maya specifically. Lastly, and this is an option I would only recommend to a professional, capable paranormal scientist or hunter in this field. A Maya can find peace if the remains are found, removed from the body of water, and given a proper burial. This seems to be effective at ending that cycle of needing someone to replace them. Everything else is a temporary solution. But bringing them home and laying them to rest seems to be the permanent and most compassionate solution. But again, I wouldn't recommend it unless you are properly trained, are capable, and have the necessary equipment to do so. Even if you have scuba gear, I would be prepared for a fight. The Maya isn't liable to understand why you're there, and they're just going to try to drown you because they're desperate, unthinking entities that are just doing what they think they have to in order to save themselves. Anyway, that's about all the information I was able to dig up about Maya. I'm afraid it wasn't much, but I hope you found it informative nonetheless. Kabuto, I would like to thank you again for shining a light on a local entity I otherwise would have missed. Thank you, my friend. Gamoon? Kamoon. You can laugh at my pronunciation later. I'm trying here, man. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can find me on all the regular alt-tech sites as well, depending on how tight you've got your tinfoil hat. If you have an entity that you need me to cover, go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below. Or, better yet, join us in the Discord server. The link is in the description box. Till next time, fellas, I'll see you down here at the lab.